Hello, everybody in the chess world. This is going to be my favorite lesson for you all, and in my favorite series, which is breaking dogmas in chess. And you know, I'll leave you the link in the description for the first video of that series, in which I talk about, not playing the best move, but playing the most practical one. And when I talk about breaking dogmas in chess, I don't want to just point out the exceptions. I'm just not going to just show you an example in which a knight on the rim is not dim. You already seen that, exceptions and stuff like that. But I'm gonna, the main subject is gonna be that dogma of, well, we cannot play things that are theoretical but tempos down. So this is the dogma that I want to break. Of course, I'm gonna be showing you an example in close positions. But okay, I'll show you an opening that I played, and I'll show you that I play a main line, and then I'll play the exact same line, but a lot of tempos down, and I still play it, and you'll see why. So, okay, so first things first. Why is it a dogma? Well, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that, like in chess clubs. Two players are in the post-mortem, and after a game, they're analyzing. And in the opening, some of them, one of them says, well, no, here I couldn't play a 5. It was impossible because if I play a 5, we're like in this Dutch opening, and it's the same, but with one tempo down. So impossible. Or the same, examples like that, like it was a religious thing. You cannot play something that is theoretical, but with tempos down, like. The first thing that I want to show you is, well, at the point of view of Vishy Anand, one of my favorite players. I love the way, even when to see him talking on YouTube. So Chess Base India made this. Well, they were asking him to just made a brief commentary about the 12 games in the World Championship match between Caruana and Carlsen. So he did, and well, at some point they showed him, I think it was game 8 or 9, or 9, I think. So they showed him that, well, this position, Carlsen was white, a3, queen a5 by Caruana, knight d2, and here instead, well, Caruana played queen d8 back. I mean, I think there was also bishop e7 or bishop b4 alternative, but yeah, the sequence was queen a5, knight d2, queen d8. So yeah, I mean, the journal is asking Anand, well, what do you think about this thing that Caruana played this immediately, so it was obviously prep, but isn't he losing a time? And well, first Anand pinpointed the fact that, well, maybe the knight on d2 is only well there, it's only well placed there if the queen is on a5. Maybe the knight will be better on f3. So in a way, white hasn't really won a tempo. Black didn't really lose a tempo. But more important, and I think this is the juicy part, I really love this. Remember, Anand is from the pre-computer era as well, and he said, anyway, I stopped thinking about chess like that. Like this thing, these dogmas again about, oh, you cannot play this because it's one tempo up or one tempo down. He mentions, I'll leave you the link on the description so you can see it for yourselves. But he says something like, well, we had even this little joke with my seconds, like if it works, it works. Like instead of thinking, oh, this is like this other opening, but with this improvement, or like this other, but instead of that, just thinking about the concrete position for its own merits, and it's really interesting. So like he stopped thinking about chess like that, right? It's really funny. This kind of reminded me to a book about by Watson. Watson is a really one of my favorite chess book writers, and he has this book on modern strategy. I'm sorry, in chess. And well, one interesting thing is he well kind of puts on the table the idea of, well, what if white is not better for starting the game? What if white is not really better as we all thought? And of course, he knows that white is better statistically, regardless of the level of the players. Yes, white usually scores better than black. But then it's kind of like going, well, let us go to the actual argument. So yeah, pretty obvious. We said white is better. They had the first move. So they have the initiative and they're a tempo up. Okay, but for black, he says, well, wait, black has an extra tempo of information. So he's trying to tell that, like, can we compensate the extra tempo in development, in reality, for that extra tempo in information? And well, he gives a lot of examples, but one example that he doesn't give, and to me goes right to the point, is the Manhattan variation of the Alekhine defense, which is e4, knight f6, the Alekhine defense, e5, and here, well, knight d5 is basically automatic, but there is knight g8, Manhattan variation. Again, I'll leave you the link in the description because Carlsen played this with black a few years ago in a rapid game against Fresinet. And when Carlsen played knight g8 back, he kind of, was kind of chuckling. He looked at Fresinet. Fresinet started laughing a little bit as well. And the title of the video goes something like Carlsen trolls, Fresinet. And yeah, it's true. I mean, at that level, losing two tempos is a way, of taunting or trolling your opponent. But again, to me, it's an excellent example because let us play a little game of Would You Rather. So, would you rather study in, the game of chess in a normal position, like this, as usual? Or would you rather study in the game of chess like this? Because yes, I understand. Most of you will probably say, yeah, well, definitely this is a better position. I have two extra tempos, I have two tempos up. I have this advanced central pawn. It could be like a spearhead for an attack, just to consolidate a center. But again, going for, Watson's argument, well, I could argue that black has a lot of information because, think about the initial position. Okay, here, you're just expecting your opponent to make a move. You're not thinking. Of course, it has to do with your opening repertoire, but you wouldn't know what to play here. Let me put it like this. What will you play here with black if it was your first move? Well, again, you probably think about an opening to win a tempo for the opposite colors. But what I mean is, you wouldn't really have an idea. Here, you're just waiting for white to play, and you're going to show your opening repertoire. But in here, I mean, whatever white plays, we already know what to do. We have the information. We're just going to play d6, next move, almost against anything. Because it's not only trying to develop the bishop. I mean, we're hitting that pawn. So we could first argue that, well, white's pawn has crossed the equator. And when a pawn does that, well, that pawn is already more in enemy territory than in its own. So it's easier to attack it. And furthermore, well, when we play d6, well, now white cannot take on d6 because otherwise, even thinking about the classical concepts, well, white just lost three tempos. I mean, they went like, what did they do? They went e4 and e5 to then play e takes e6. So, of course, objectively, this is a better position, and also for the computers, than the initial one. And we could argue that, well, white is going to be able, if they want, to play f4, d4, and knight f3, and sustain that e5 pawn. But again, as a concept, to me, is quite interesting, right? Okay, now let us go to the real subject, and really, I really like this. So, I told you that I'm going to show you an opening that I play always, and that I'm going to show you like the same position, but a lot of tempos down, regarding the other best ideal position, and I still play in them all. So that opening is going to be the Gurgenidze defense. It's going to be a close defense. This is the key. So for those of you who don't know what the Gurgenidze, I'll show you like the main position, which is cool because it's just a pawn structure. They're all pawn moves. So this will be like the ideal for black, the ideal version of the Gurgenidze for black and the main line. So let us say e4, g6, d4, c6, f4, d5, e5, h5. Okay, this is already the initial position for the Gurgenidze. So this is a modern defense, and now the pawns have been pretty fixed. So, well, black is going to put this, we're going to put this g8 knight probably on h6. From there, it'll be looking at g4 and f5, the same as this bishop. This bishop is looking at those squares. It's gonna come into one or another depending on what white does, but and then eventually we're gonna close it up with e6. We'll have this V kind of V line pawn chain, and okay, it's a solid position. So to prove my point and show you how I am going to lose tempos, I'm going to go to the main line. That is to say, in general, the best play for both sides, and you'll see what I mean. So let us see that. Knight f3, knight h6, as I said, knight c3, bishop g4. Of course, there are alternatives to all of these moves, but I'll present you not only the, in general, best play for both, but you'll easily understand the spirit of the opening. So bishop e3, knight f5 hits the bishop retreats, we close it up, e6, white plays h3, we exchange, and now we play h4, just to cut this g4 possibility, no, not to here, just, well, to here, because we will have, we can always take en passant. So then bishop d3, and now already a little detail that, okay, again, I don't know if you'll be interested in the opening, but you will be in relationship with the other positions where I lose the time. So in here, we might think that this f8 bishop goes into the fianchetto because we have played like, like a modern. So, but no, the detail is bishop on e7 is really important. So first of all, the bishop is much better on e7 than on g7. On g7 is just, just going against a wall of pawns here. And from e7, well, we're, protecting h4, we're fostering a future possible c5. It's much better, but much more important, we're not going to play short castles. We're going to castle by hand. So that g7 square belongs to the king. This is like the strategical main importance of bishop on e7. In fact, we're just going to go king on f8 and king g7. So the main line will go castles, knight d7 first, just development, knight e2, so this c-pawn is now mobile, they can throw c4 if they want, king f8, as we said, we're going to castle by hand, or the other thing is, with the king on g7, we keep the rook on the h file, right? We don't want to castle short because we're going to have rook on f8 and having to lose a tempo going back. That is the other detail. So b3 to prepare the c4, king g7. Okay, let us stop here. This will be the main line of this ideal way of playing the Gurgenidze for black. And I've played this position, this exact position, mostly in Blitz and on the internet 1,000 times, and I like it. So let us go to the second version where I'll see how that I'm going to lose a lot of tempo. So sometimes in this position, we said that the ideal Gurgenidze started with c6 because we went f4, d5, e5, h5. Now, sometimes I don't play c6. And why don't I play c6? Well, because it depends on my prep for the game. If I play c6, then that means that I have prepared something against c4. As I always said, be careful with transpositions. Now it's like a King's Indian. So, or a Grunfeld, but this is the thing. Sometimes I do play this, and I played, bishop g7 and d5 as Grunfeld, or more like a King's Indian with d6 and e5. But depends on my prep for the day. So, and bishop g7 is something that I play quite often. At the same time, I might transpose into double fianchetto, perch defense, modern, rovage. There are always transpositions. We're always, trying to, in a way, speculate a little bit. So, but when I play bishop g7, let us see. Sometimes after knight c3, instead of d6 and perch, I do play c6 anyway, searching for the Gurgenidze. But you'll see the big difference. I have this guy here, and we said that we wanted it on f8, and we wanted this square for the king. So let us play the exact same line so I can prove my point to you. Let us play the same moves for both sides. Same exact moves, different order, and bishop on g7. Bishop on d3, e6, castles, knight d7, knight e2, and bishop f8 main line, because we cannot play with the bishop on g7 and play castles. The plan is still the same. The song remains the same. We gotta play bishop e7. This is the main line. b3, okay, white's play is just coming faster. Bishop e7 only now. c4, king f8. And again, it's white's turn. So look at the difference. In the other ideal position, in the other ideal version, I had this position. And now in this other line, I have this position. 2 tempos down. White included c4. And I'm still 1 tempo away from consolidating with g7. So before explaining why I play both of these lines, I'm going to give you an even more exaggerated example, which is the same position but less tempos, even less. And look at this. This is beautiful because I discovered this by accident. I was watching the games of a very dear friend of mine. We used to teach together. that was a difficult one, and play together, study together. But at some point, I was watching his games on the internet, and he gave me even a better example. This was really amazing. So this is gonna be e6 and before and d6. Okay. So well, a long time ago, this friend, well, as usual, no names, as my dear friend might not want to be mentioned, but a long time ago, this friend of mine showed me this line, which is called the checkbirds. And I really liked it, as we both started, studying it and playing it in tournaments. And the total main line is f4, and now the total main line for black, and the one that I play every time, is queen a5. Well, the idea is we're pinning the knight, we're threatening knight takes e4, and we're also fostering e5. So the main line will go bishop d3, e5, etc. But I was watching his games, and in one game after f4, my dear friend played d5. And I was like, well, he lost it. He's crazy because now e5, I mean, if you go to g4, they can play h3. And then if knight h6, g4, what is this? No, knight g8. And you see where this is all going. Now we're going to go to the exact same line to see this Gurgenidze. But here, okay, we've lost 2 tempos with the d-pawn because we play first d6 and then play d5. And we also lost 2 tempos with the knight. We went knight f6 and knight back. It's true that we do have the bishop closer to our ideal and only square e7, but still you will see how I lost even another tempo because, again, let us do the exact same kind of logical main line moves. Takes, knight, bishop, h4, and now white is even quicker. c4, bishop on e7. So remember that the last position we saw, it was already 2 tempos down, but this is 3 tempos down because this was our last position. And now, always with the white to move. And now we have this. We have 3 tempos down. Now, again, regarding like the total main ideal line, that will be this one. So this 3 tempos down. So it is white included c4, and we are now 2 tempos away from our consolidating king g7 move. So normally in the Gurgenidze, if you feed the positions to a computer, the computer will always give kind of like a clear advantage for white. Never decisive. Computer understands that there are no real breaks and that black is really solid. But of course, computers really, the engines really like, the space and stuff. Now, these 3 positions that I'm showing you, these 3 versions, in these 3 versions, the computer doesn't change the evaluation that much. All 3 positions are the same, like considering clear advantage for white. Of course, computer prefers, not to be 3 tempos down, but now, why is that? So, look at this, which is the worst version. So here, yes, white is pretty quick. Now, white cannot prevent me from playing my consolidating king f8 and king g7 moves. And when that happens, we're kind of going to cut the board in 2. We're just going to be looking at action on the queen side, So, like this whole line here, it will be in the middle, we'll be only on all of this side, like in this side here, marked with a cross. So that means that Well, the extra tempos for white. Well, but are they really useful? Because let us say that in here, in exchange for our future king f8 and king g7, white plays, I don't know, c5 and b4. Well, maybe again they'll be over pushing. Maybe if they do that, when we play b6, we will be already undermining the chain, the pawn chain. It's not such a big difference. So it's really curious. So this, of course, this always happens only in close positions. As I always like to say, give one extra tempo to Kasparov and he'll kill you. In fact, Kasparov will give you like a rook and a minor piece for one tempo. Yeah, but in open positions where it really matters. In close positions, the value of the tempos is much, much, much lower. So yeah, you can even afford to do such things. I think this is, of course, these examples might have seen a little bit too much, but it is kind of like that. And I can assure you, the only game of the Gurgenidze that I actually played in a tournament was not the exact position, but basically in my second version, which will be like this. What I mean is that it was one game in which I had to play, after playing bishop g7, I had to go back to bishop f8 and bishop on e7, and it ended up being just a draw, I think, anyway. But I've played the ideal position, the exact ideal position on the internet lots of times, and I've even played the worst position because, actually, to tell you the truth, usually here I still play queen a5 in these check parts. But after seeing my friend's game, sometimes I'm in this position on the internet and I'm like, I kind of want to go for a Gurgenidze. I like this modern character. And so, I'd even get into the position 3 tempos down and it is still playable. So I hope you like this lesson. And again, try to break up dogmas, open up your minds. At least try not to be religious about chess. No, I won't play that because it's the same opening that I know, but a tempo down. Just last but not the least, Anand, I think, even makes a little joke in his videos, like saying, well, if we were to consider this thing about the tempos and the openings, well, we might as well say that against c4, initial move c4 English, well, e5 is a bad move. Because it's a Sicilian with colors reversed, and if Sicilian is already good for black and an opening that even super GMs played, well, we cannot answer e5. It's just a Sicilian, another tempo down, and it is, of course, one normal opening played by GMs as any other. So I think it's good sometimes to exaggerate like that to get right to the point. So really, thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video.